Here we are with episode 20 from VOLTRON. Again on YouTube, Spotify, Rumble. We have an Instagram page now that you can follow us on. We're still building that up, so go check that out. This episode today is based on a conversation that me and Brian had. This is a topic we've wanted to address for a few months now. And I want to, well, first, the topic is we were kind of wondering where is the line drawn in the case of the military being used on people. And what is weird is that Brian, and I've kind of noticed this with other people, not only Brian but other people I've discussed this topic with, that were in the military or are in the military now. They're kind of scratching their heads too on this. And as you will see as I talk more about this, that isn't uncommon. It seems to me that the people, when any debates that I've discovered or seen on the news or heard on any talk show, it seems like the politician in the military don't even really know where this line. The military themselves, they're all debating it. Well, what's the debate? It either is or it isn't. To me, the fact that they're debating this says that they don't know either. I want to stress that very ironically, we were planning to do this episode before Donald Trump started expressing his wish to use the military in Washington, D.C., or in anywhere in the USA for that matter. So this is not a jump on the bandwagon reactionary type episode. We were already planning to do this. And then it was kind of weird when Donald Trump started using the military in U.S. Cities or towns, territories. And, I got in touch with Brian. I said, now's a better time than ever to do this episode, this topic. So first of all, let me say this. I've done a lot of research, and as I've already alluded, I haven't really gotten any answers. The articles themselves, when picking apart the different instances, and there have been several where the military was used on people, mostly for, riots, crowd control type situations, preventing destruction of property. The articles that I found, the articles don't even really give a very black and white, they almost seem confused. I'll explain in a minute. I hope I'm not muddying the waters more and confusing the audience, but let me get into this. So first of all, like I said, I have seen quite a few clips of people in Washington, D.C., politicians debating amongst themselves, debating amongst people in the military of when the military can be used and not used. And again, I already said it once, I'm going to say it again. They're debating something. To me, the fact that they're debating it says that they don't know. There's not a clear black and white or set of rules. So the fact that they're debating it, to me, that's already problematic. Now, what I noticed in these articles, and this is the basis of what I said to Brian when I wanted to do this episode, it's pretty accepted in this country that the National Guard, for example, if it's the National Guard that is used, let's say to quell a riot, I'd say across the board, the vast majority of people, it doesn't really raise much of an eyebrow. Now, of course, there are people maybe that are heavily into this topic or politically active that are going to have opinions on it. But for the most part, I'd say it's pretty socially acceptable that for the National Guard to be used within our borders. And that was the point I was making to Brian, was they're saying we can't use the military in this country. Isn't the National Guard the military? So you're saying the National Guard is not, you're saying there's the National Guard and then there's everybody else. And I find that already to be problematic, because the National Guard is the military. So right away, the military has been used, is used, and it doesn't seem like that really breaks the rules that we have laid out. Now, having said that, there have been occurrences all the way back to the Civil War where I'll say non-national guard military personnel, we'll put it that way, has been used on people. Again, it seems to me it's mostly for riots and things of that nature. So aside from the National Guard, other branches of the military have been used. But when you read the articles, like one article I was reading right before I came here, some of the instances they use. So, example, I'll find an article or a piece that says times when the military was used on people. You'll have times where other branches were used, or the National Guard in conjunction with other branches. But then I noticed some of these occurrences, according to these articles, it was just the National Guard. So even these people writing these pieces are kind of considering situations where it was only the National Guard, like myself. They're categorizing that as the military being used on American people. So again, I don't know where this line is or what. And I'll tell you this too. I've had this argument with many friends, military friends, or I've seen them debating this with other people. And the word martial law is thrown around a lot. Times when there was martial law, and they're quick to say, well, a massive police operation, for example, when the marathon bombing in Boston, that wasn't martial law. Martial law was not declared. Well, you're right, it wasn't. I mean, from a technical standpoint, no, there was no martial law. But there's got to be some word for what that was. Okay, it wasn't martial law, but it had to be something. What do you call that then? A police presence of that magnitude. And I've always argued, I feel that the police and the equipment and the weaponry they have now, I feel like to me, any clips I saw of the National Guard in Washington, D.C., I would say that the police they look as equipped or even better equipped than the National Guard. I mean, if you had a battle between the National Guard and the police in any given city, I think the police could probably hold their own. I do believe that. So, and even this term martial law, I'm starting to wonder about that too, because in any given country, when martial law is declared, is the military really in control? Like, is the general of the military now in control and the politician and playing ruler, leader? Or is it, in the case of martial law, the prime minister or the president or the monarchy, whatever it is, the dictator, whatever the form of government is? Is it more so that they're in control and the military is just being used as a security force? Like, what is martial law? Is martial law even really what they say it is? Is it really that the military is now in control? Or is it that the military is the security force under the command of whoever the local politician or ruler is? So I just think that, like, a lot of these terms have been used and thrown around, and I wonder if anyone's even really thought about this. And again, if anyone thinks that this dialogue that I'm having right now is naive or uneducated, look, we've been talking about this for a couple months now, and it seems to me that the people in charge, and that includes people in the military, they're not even clear on where this line is. I hear them debating it, and I'm like, these people don't even know either. Debate is, to me, when you debate, it's because there's a lack of a definitive conclusion. That's where the debate comes in. We don't know. We're debating it, where one side has one idea, another side. It's the same with democracy. Democracy is a default mechanism for when people can't agree. If people, a society, can agree on the same morality or set of rules or what is good or bad, once you can't agree on that and people have different versions of what is moral or immoral, that's where democracy comes in. We don't know anymore. We're debating it, and now we got to vote on it. So it's kind of the same thing. I'm going to use that kind of as a gateway into this next topic, which is because I think this stuff's kind of all tied together. Um, there's been a lot, this last couple days, mass shootings have been in the mail, in the news, in the mail. Mass shootings have been in the news, and there's obviously the Charlie Kirk assassination, and he was assassinated. Make no mistake. First of all, I want to say the look. I've said it before, and I stand by it. The whole mental illness thing. I am so exhausted on the mental illness get out of jail free card. In rare cases, is mental illness probably a factor? I'm sure it is. Is medication a factor? People being over medicated? Sure. But you cannot convince me that on this level, for it to be happening this frequently and for it to be strategic, going after politicians, going after churches, going after perceived, the targets are very specific and have some type of political connotation to them. You can't tell me all these people are mentally ill. I believe it's a lot of angry people who are growing up in a world where life is cheap and they think nothing of killing somebody. I really believe that. I've said before that for decades in this country, we've had people that were mentally ill, people that are messed up. We've had guns everywhere, and this type of thing wasn't happening, with the exception of, I'd say, the Kent State shooting. After Columbine, it set a copycat trend. People saw it. The idea was those two Fruit Loops out in Colorado set a trend. And I had a feeling this was going to happen at the time when it took place. I said, this is revenge of the nerds. All the people who ever felt disenfranchised or made fun of or bullied, the two Columbine kids set the standard now. Like, this is what you can do. This is how you get revenge. And now it's a normal thing. It's just increased and become more prevalent over time. Go back before Columbine, again, with the exception of Kent State, this wasn't a problem. So all those years previously, I'd say probably more people had guns for hunting even back when you get into the 50s, 40s, and before. We had mental institutions, but this stuff didn't happen. Again, I believe this is a case. If we made a pie chart, the biggest piece of the pie would be people that are hostile, angry, know that they have a way now to throw a tantrum if life isn't going their way, and they have no sympathy for other people, no understanding of the damage they do. And speaking of the damage, what's kind of crazy is, and you see it with Charlie Kirk, regardless of what you think, some people think, that you're already hearing conspiracy theories. It wasn't really the person they said it was, etc., etc. Regardless, or take Charlie Kirk out of the picture, okay? Regardless, these types of activities always end up having the opposite effect every time. Look at Charlie Kirk. Now you've got there's people all over the internet now, like 100 times what there was before, within a day of him dying, going to colleges, going to schools, setting up a table and debating kids. You've got this movement now, this massive conservative movement. Again, regardless of what you think of Charlie Kirk or whether you believe he was killed the way he was or what, maybe you don't believe it, maybe you think there was a conspiracy, that's fine. Look, that's not what I'm addressing. Look at the after effect. And again, I'm going to say this too. I am not here. My goal is not to push a conservative agenda or a Republican agenda or to tell people they should vote for Donald Trump. That is not why I say this. I've said it on this show. I'm going to say it again for the people that are new to the show. I live in Massachusetts. This is one of the most tightly Democrat Party controlled areas probably in the entire country. A lot of people say California is the most liberal state. I made the argument. I'm starting to think it might even be Massachusetts. Maybe it's not even California anymore. But anyway, I have no problem with people who have an issue with Donald Trump, who pick him apart. They lay out the debate that, or the argument about conservatives and the damage they're doing and the damage the Republican Party is doing. I'm fine with that. People make a lot of good points. I've got issues with Donald Trump. I think he's doing a lot of things that are honestly moronic. But my argument or my frustration is they then go on, they proceed to try to tell me and everybody else that the solution to Donald Trump is the Democrat Party. I live in this state. They are not the solution. They're pulling a scam. Elizabeth Warren, we have to go after billionaires. We have to go after billionaires. She changed it to her focus to billionaires when everyone figured out she was a millionaire. Bruce Springsteen, there's a new one now. Bruce Springsteen says we have to go after multi-billionaires. So now there's a new term, multi-billionaire. So I'm thinking, well, if you're Bruce Springsteen and you're making the money that he makes, I guess you're going to have to say multi-billionaire. And I don't know if he's a billionaire or not, but the fact that he's saying multi-billionaire, I'm curious now how much money he has. And I can't stand this whole thing where people, listen, because your favorite artist now suddenly took a political stance that you don't like, that doesn't change the merit of the music. If Bruce Springsteen or Bob Seger or Elton John or somebody says something that I disagree with politically, that doesn't mean suddenly the music's no good. So that's kind of silly. People go, that's it. His music was garbage anyway. What do you mean it was garbage? You liked it until 5 minutes ago, and now you're going to tell me it's garbage. So what's funny about the mass shooter or the school shooter is that they're enacting their revenge on society. They're making a statement. They're sticking up for the small person. But what happens is they end up causing more oppression, more of a police state. Now, instead of dealing with the bullies in your school, you got a police officer in your school. Yay. And all the parents are begging for it, too. The parents have had enough. They want police. Like I said, I speak out against this stuff. I talk about having self-respect. The self-respect has been knocked out of us. We are okay with being filmed all day, with having cameras everywhere. We are okay with it. We're okay with being humiliated at the airport, and now people are asking for it, begging for it. And look at the young generation. They were grown up on it. Talk to any kid 20 years and younger. They look at you. You tell them there was a time when you could go out up to the Hanover Mall and there was no security cameras. They look at you like you got 10 heads. They can't even believe it. I know the Hanover Mall's not there anymore, but you get my point. Braintree Mall. Okay, I remember when these cameras started going up everywhere. They're not understanding that ultimately it's having the opposite effect. I read an article the other day. It was between 2020 and 2024, over 1 million people left the Democrat Party. Oh, no, excuse me, over 2 million. 2 million? That's more people than are watching Jimmy Kimmel's show, and I'll get to him in a minute. Think about how many people that can sway an election. When this platoon of gamma males shows up at the Charlie Kirk prayer vigil up in Boston and disrupts it, what do you think that's doing? You might not like Charlie Kirk, you might not like religious people, but you have to understand every time you do something like that, people are leaving your party. And I'm not saying that they're all going Republican. Maybe they're going independent, but that still hurts your party. I've been generous to the Democrats. I've told them for years, this is how you fix it. This is what you need to do. I'm not doing this to pick on you. I'm doing it to expose the scam that you're no better than the Republicans. Yeah, maybe I sound a little right-leaning because of where I live. If I'm criticizing my leaders and they're all Democrat, well, yeah, I'm going to sound like a Republican. Like I've said, if we did this show and I lived in the middle of Arkansas, it would sound like a left-wing communist show. I'm convinced of it. That's what this show would be. But I'm not. I'm up here. You are doing damage. You are not helping your party. I would not be surprised, when a political party starts getting desperate, and doing stupid things and resorting to violence. And again, I'm not, put the shootings aside for a minute, okay? It could be in the form, like I said, of disrupting prayer vigils, okay? Flipping tables over at colleges where someone set up a table with pamphlets that you don't agree with. That's desperation. That's the beginning of the end of your party. It would not surprise me if the Democrat Party was reduced to some type of bizarre resistance group in the next 7 or 8 years. Jimmy Kimmel. First of all, I am not a fan of his. I want to tell my opinion on him, but rest assured, my opinion on him does not reflect what I'm about to say in my assessment of what happened to him in the last couple weeks. I'm pretty sure I brought him up in previous episodes. My issue with Jimmy Kimmel, he's another one of these people, and he's not the only one. They're all over the place. He's going on and on, takes a liberal stance on women's rights, caring about women, women are being oppressed, the whole thing. And then you look at the Man Show and you see these skits that he did and the way he portrayed women. And people, well, it's a joke, it's comedy, it's, you know what? We're seeing more and more now, pop culture, even humor, it does shape. It can be used to sculpt people's opinions. So I don't completely dismiss the damage that he did with that show. Music, television, these people, you can sit there and say they don't have power and it's the parents. I'm telling you, the people that are in these industries, they know that they do have power, and that's why you see people in Hollywood speaking out, because they do have that type of influence. They have a lot of influence. So Jimmy Kimmel with his skits, back to the Man Show, and Adam Carolla also, who's conservative family guy now, trying to give men advice on how they're supposed to live. He was part of that show at one point. Same with Joe Rogan. These were all Man Show alumni. I think that show's disgusting. I've always thought that. And that's where Jimmy Kimmel came from. And now he's going to, girls jumping on trampolines. Remember that at the end of every show? And now he's going to lecture us about how women should be treated. So that's my stance on Jimmy Kimmel that I wanted to get out before I pick apart what happened to him. Obviously, I'm a proponent of free speech. From where I'm sitting, from the best that I can describe it, Brendan Carr apparently was making threats to take him off the air or telling people you better do something about this guy. Brendan Carr at the Federal Communications Commission should not be doing that. He should not be doing that. Donald Trump or Brendan Carr should not be pulling people off the air. The government should not be pulling people off the air. Here's the problem. The affiliates in their local regions were the first ones to complain. People were angry. People watching the show were complaining to them, and they went and complained to ABC. And ABC pulled them off the air. Now, could Brendan Carr have been a factor? Absolutely. And if he was, shame on him. But ultimately, that was an internal issue. Ultimately, at the end of the day, and again, I'm acknowledging that neither Brendan Carr nor Donald Trump should be making threats to pull anyone off the air. I get that. But ultimately, it was ABC that did it. And the reason I bring it up is because when I see people saying Donald Trump pulled him off the air. No, he didn't. ABC did. I will say it again. Could Donald Trump have been an influence? Yes. Should he have been an influence? No. Do I agree with him being an influence? Absolutely not. But that doesn't change the fact that it was ABC that did it. Now, why did Jimmy Kimmel get pulled off? He went up there and said, it alluded to the fact that the Make America Great Again crowd was trying to do everything they could to make people believe that this guy wasn't part of their crowd. Listen, if we can set aside conspiracy theories for a minute, this kid didn't like Charlie Kirk. They have text messages. Now, again, I have to factor this in. Let's say it's all a lie. It's a big cover-up. It's a big this, that, the other thing. Okay? Fine. That also doesn't, shooting Charlie Kirk and then saying it was why would a MAGA guy shoot Charlie Kirk? I don't know. We can get into that whole world too. Again, we can get into the whole conspiracy world. But most normal American, let me put it this way, the average American believes that it was a leftist that did it. Okay? So if you put yourself in the position and you can debate me and say, no, it was Israel and it was this and that, okay, fine. But if you take it from the perspective from the average American, based on what they know at face value, what they saw on the news, what Jimmy Kimmel knows, okay, saying that, implying it was a right wing guy is just kind of silly. And if you say something like that, it's going to upset people. And that was what he did. What people going, freedom of speech. He was pulled up. No, he said something that was perceived to be a lie, and the affiliates didn't like that. And I'm being nice by saying perceived to be a lie. Most people would say it was a lie. If you go and you say something that your boss thinks is a blatant lie, they can take action. They're a private company. And I know this hurts for a lot of people to hear this. Or they think I'm taking the side of Donald Trump. I'm not. We've talked on this show about private property. We've had lengthy discussions about it. They're a private organization. Whether you think it was fair or not, there was a conspiracy or Brendan Carr had influence, they're a private organization. I've said, I can't, if me or anyone else goes to work and something, let's say a local politician shows up and is shaking hands at your job or whatever. I've had, I knew a kid that worked at the, one of the cranberry places, I think down near Plimpton. I don't know if it was Ocean Spray, but there was some other company. I don't, maybe it wasn't cranberries, maybe it was Cisco or something. And Charlie Baker showed up. If I'm there working and Charlie Baker shows up, I can't, I've talked about my disdain for Charlie Baker. I can't go up to him and say something to him and give him a piece of my mind. If I do, my boss can fire me. I don't have freedom of speech in there. It's his private business. Unfortunately, my freedom of speech ends in that because his freedom to do what he wants supersedes that. And this is a tough thing for people. This is a tough conversation to say there are these kind of limitations. I can't do that. I will suffer consequences, just like Jimmy Kimmel did. He suffered consequences. Now, I want to say this too, because I said, I'm not, there's a lot of criticisms I have about Donald Trump. Let's get into one of them too, because I talked about The Man Show, Jimmy Kimmel, Joe Rogan. I think The Man Show was on Spike TV. I'm almost positive it was. Let's take, for example, I see Donald Trump working and his sons side by side with Kid Rock and Dana White. That whole early 2000s, Spike TV, MTV at the Beach House, the MTV The Grind, the Thong Song, WWE Attitude Era, Maxim Magazine, Ring Girls, Spike TV, that whole Brian likes that. That whole world. That's the world where Kid Rock and Dana White came from. So when I hear about the moral decline of the country, well, where do those two come from? That's kind of their world of entertainment. And we're associating with this. Like I've said before, conservatives are very, very slow to figure this stuff out. I'm seeing everywhere, they're saying, in a world of Katy Perry's and Taylor Swift's and Cardi B's, be a Erica Kirk. Well, it took this long? It took something this devastating to happen for people to realize that? You should have figured that out 30 years ago. Be a Erica Kirk instead of a Cyndi Lauper or a Madonna. And yeah, they were much lesser extreme versions of what we have now in the entertainment industry, but still, the point remains. Now, another thing I want to get into is I want to reiterate again, because there's a lot of talk about Israel and Palestine. And this gets back to what I was talking about before, about learning how to debate and push your point, prove your point, as opposed to behaving like a lunatic. I'm starting to see now an awakening within the Conservative Party. There is clearly a demographic of conservatives that are starting to question the behavior of Israel. You've got a legitimate movement now where people are open minded to the whole Free Palestine movement and what liberals or people who are on the side of Palestine have to say. They're becoming open minded to it. And again, when you act like a moron, when you behave like a chimpanzee, you're turning people off. You're making it so they immediately don't want to hear it. I will reiterate again my stance on Israel and Palestine. I've said before, I refuse to pick a side on this because I believe there are sheep, thieves, slaves, and scam artists on both sides. Yes, there are starving children in Palestine. Yes, there are people who are anti Semitic towards Israel. Absolutely. But my stance on it is no different than how I see any other conflict in the world. Every time I explore or look deeper into any civil war or any type of conflict, every time I look at it and I read about it and I say it's coming from all sides. There are no good guys here. It's coming from all sides. But anyway, there are people. I saw the other day, there was a protest, and a guy over in Israel posted there was thousands and thousands and thousands of people. These were Israelis in Israel, and they were saying we don't represent our government, and they're angry and they're questioning what's going on. These were Israelis doing this. And I've talked about in this show too, Israeli soldiers who I've seen interviews with who kind of defected and said, this isn't right what we're doing. I don't like this. So, people are waking up to your point of view. But disrupting prayer vigils, burning down churches, acting a fool, it's not getting you anywhere. Your movement is being picked apart. You know what? I believe that being a leftist at a college campus is a lot like being in the death metal scene, which I know a lot about. I've used this analogy before. People that play or listen to or involved in metal or any type of extreme music, what happens is when you're surrounded by that music all the time, it is very easy to forget that most of the world does not listen to this. It is very easy to forget that this is a subculture. And you start throwing your weight around, making fun of other music, trying to get other people, oh, this is funny. All these people listen to Belle Biv DeVoe. Well, I'm going to crank Suffocation. Right? It's the same thing as once you're wrapped in a culture, in a world or a political view, you start, when it's churning people off, it's very difficult for you to see that. Because if everybody you're surrounded by believes the same thing you do, and this is all you're exposed to all day long, how can you possibly see what's going on outside? How can you possibly see the warning signs if it's falling apart? It's going to be very difficult. So there you go. That's all I have today. I didn't think today would be very long. I wanted to rip through all of this. I did want, I thought we'd be talking more, and I thought the martial law conversation would be a lot more lengthy. But like I said, I told Brian when I got in here, I don't feel I've really found many answers. It seems like there are all different scenarios where the National Guard can be used, or in conjunction with other branches, or non-National Guard. National Guard and non-national, I guess that's what we'll call them, the non-National Guard. And and then there's my argument that the National Guard is the military and they're used on people all the time. So that's where we're at right now. It seems like this is still a debate in this country, and the answers are not all there. So anyway, check that out again, the Form Voltron podcast on Instagram, as I said at the beginning of the show. We're on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify. I'm sure you already know one of those that we're on if you're listening to this. And that's all I got for now. Thank you very much.